Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Linda from the Upper Saddle River Library. I want to thank you for coming today, and I want to thank Nina Androski, who's a delightful, did I say that right? Delightful Tea brand ambassador. So I'm excited. She's going to go through the world of tea with us. I have muted you guys right now, and this program is being recorded and will be on the Upper Saddle River Library YouTube page. We'll probably post it tomorrow. I will monitor the chat during the program as well, but again, I'll let Nina take over, but she said if you guys want to unmute yourselves and ask a question, that's okay too. And with that, I'm going to mute myself and let Nina take it away.
Great. Thank you, Linda. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for being here this afternoon. I'm Nina Androski. I'm a brand ambassador for an online tea company called Tealightful Tea, and they offer organic loose leaf tea and tea accessories. I've loved tea my whole life. I have great memories of going for afternoon tea with my parents. It was such a nice experience. I've really had tea all my life, but I really started studying and learning about tea in 2006. I've taken online tea certification courses. I continually attend tea workshops and classes to continue and further my knowledge. Tea is something that I personally drink every day. I feel like it helps my immune system, and I drink it in a very mindful way, which I'll tell you later. You can kind of incorporate a little mini tea break into your day just to pause and breathe for 5 minutes. I love sharing my knowledge and passion for tea with everyone that I meet. Today, I'm going to go over the 5 main types of tea, the history of tea, how to brew a perfect cup of tea, and the wellness benefits of drinking tea. I hope by the end of this presentation, you'll feel inspired to drink some more tea or try a different type of tea that I'm going to mention, and that you'll be able to make a proper cup of tea without it tasting bitter. Throughout the presentation, I have some quizzes if you want to type the answers in the chat. And at the end, Linda's going to do some raffles, as she mentioned. So I'm going to share my screen now. And can everybody see that? Okay, thank you, Beatrice. So welcome to this presentation today, the introduction to the world of tea, from tea plant to tea cup. Tea is the most consumed beverage in the world after water. A lot of people think it would be coffee, but it's actually tea. Every day, about 3 billion cups of tea is consumed by people around the world. There are 5 main types of tea: white tea, green tea, oolong, black, and pu'er. And usually people have not heard of this last one, pu'er, but I'm going to go over each one in more detail. You can see that white tea is very different looking from black tea. It's very light compared to black tea. And I'm going to tell you why that is later as well. All tea comes from the exact same plant. So it's called, the botanical name for this plant is the Camellia sinensis. When I first started studying about tea, I thought there was a white tea plant, and that's where they get the white tea from, and a black tea plant. But actually, all different types of tea come from the exact same plant. So I thought this was pretty fascinating when I first learned about this. I'm sure all of you have had herbal tea, but I'm here to bust a myth and tell you that anything that's considered herbal is not true tea, because it does not contain any tea leaves from the Camellia sinensis plant. So I'll get into herbals later in more detail, but for now, just so you know, anything that's herbal is a dried fruit herb, spice, flowers, roots, seeds, bark that is infused in boiling water, and that's what makes the beverage. But there are no tea leaves in anything called herbal tea. A lot of the commercial tea companies like Celestial Seasonings, as you can see here, they actually will put right on their packages herbal tea, but that's actually really not the correct term. The correct term is an herbal infusion or an herbal tisane, which is a French word meaning just that you're infusing something in water. So now you'll know the difference. The tea plant originated in China, and the Camellia sinensis plant grows best in warm, humid climates with lots of rainfall. So this is the perfect environment for the tea plant to grow. Tea as a daily beverage was discovered by accident over 5,000 years ago. There was an emperor Shennong at the time, and he was sitting under a wild tea tree plant and was boiling some water, and some leaves, some dried leaves from the Camellia sinensis plant fell into his boiling water, and it turned it a brown color. He tasted it and he loved it, and so he thought this beverage was very restorative, and he encouraged his people to start drinking this as a beverage. The top 5 tea producing countries are China, India, Sri Lanka, and if you've heard of Ceylon tea, the country of Sri Lanka used to be known as Ceylon, so that's where you get that name, the Ceylon tea. Turkey and Kenya. In the late 18th century, the tea plant came to America in 1786, and it was brought here by a French explorer and botanist, André Michaux. And he brought the little clippings of the tea plant over here to South Carolina, and it started thriving in that environment because it's very warm and humid down there. A couple summers ago, I had the opportunity to visit the Charleston Tea Garden, and they actually have plants still growing from when the botanist brought it over, because tea plants can grow for hundreds of years if they are maintained properly. If you're ever down in this area, I highly recommend going and stopping at this tea garden. It's a great visit. You get to go on a trolley and go out into the field so you can see all the tea plants growing. At the end, there you can tour the factory where you can see the tea bags being made. Would also like to mention this tea garden was bought by the Bigelow Tea Company, so they own this tea garden. And then at the end, there's a great gift shop, and they have unlimited samples of iced tea and hot tea. So it's a great trip if you ever get the opportunity. So I'm mostly talking about loose leaf tea today, but anything I say can apply to tea bags. But for the best quality tasting tea with the most health benefits, you really want to drink loose leaf tea. And when they pick, for the best quality loose leaf tea, only the top 2 inches of the tea plant is picked by hand. And people are trained to actually pick just 2 leaves and a bud. And it's a very skilled thing to learn how to do. On large tea plantations, like the Charleston Tea Garden, They do use machines to harvest the tea leaves, but obviously you're going to pick way more than just the top 2 inches. So the best quality tea is really picked by hand. And the highest concentration of antioxidants also exists in the top 2 inches of the plant. And antioxidants in tea are called flavonoids, and they are the disease-fighting compounds that help your body stave off illnesses. So that's why tea is a very healthy beverage to drink. There's a term in the tea industry called tea flush, and this is the time of year that the tea leaves are plucked or harvested. Tea plants generally have 3 flushes or harvests, first, second, and third. And the first flush is considered the freshest and the best quality because the tea plant goes dormant in the winter, and in the spring, the plant is coming to life again. And this is when the best quality tea is grown. Each flush has a different flavor profile depending on the time of year it's picked. But the spring is considered the best quality tea, and it will also be the most expensive too. So you might be wondering by now, if all tea comes from the same plant, then how do we actually get the different types of teas that I mentioned before? So the answer is oxidation. And oxidation is how long the tea leaves are allowed to be exposed to the air after they've been harvested. So the same thing happens when you cut an apple or a banana and the fruit starts to turn brown because it's getting in contact with oxygen. This is the same thing that happens with tea leaves. So after the tea leaves are plucked, they start to naturally turn brown because they're being exposed to oxygen. So how long you allow the tea leaves to oxidize before the oxidation process gets stopped actually determines the type of tea you will get in the end. There's a term in the tea industry called kill green or fixation, and this basically means to stop the tea leaf oxidation at a desired level using gentle heating methods. So there are many different types of ways that you can stop the oxidation process. It can be something as simple as just allowing the tea leaves to dry in the sun. In this photo, the gentleman is tossing the leaves in a wok that is heated, so that's stopping the oxidation process. You can steam leaves, you can blanch leaves, you can bake them in the oven, and you can also tumble them in heated cylinders. This is a chart here showing the oxidation process for each different type of tea. So you can see each type goes through its own process. White and green teas are the least oxidized out of all of the teas. Oolong is considered semi-oxidized, and black tea is considered fully oxidized. Pu'er is a tea that is not only fully oxidized, but it's also fermented. Basically, to put it simply, more oxidation produces dark-colored, strong-flavored teas like black tea, and less oxygen results in light-colored, delicate flavored teas like white and green. So this is the first tea quiz. If anyone wants to type their answers in the chat, or you can unmute yourself too. What is the botanical name of the tea plant? Can you name one of the top 5 tea producing countries? What is a tea flush? And what state is the location of America's only working tea garden? Give me a minute.
So if you guys want to unmute yourselves, and I'll watch the, this is Lynn, I'll look at the chat as well, if you want to type in the chat. Although typing the botanical name, that might be hard.
That's true. I'm just going to go over them. So the botanical name, oh, I do see someone. Beatrice got it. Melania. The botanical name for the tea plant is the Camellia sinensis. Great job. Some of the countries right now that are the top 5 tea producing. Let me check. We got China, India. Beatrice got all of them. Kenya, I think Beatrice is taking notes. Kenya, India, Sri Lanka, China, Turkey, and Kenya. A tea flush is the time of year that the tea leaves are harvested. And Charleston, South Carolina is where America's only working tea garden is. So you guys did awesome.
You know what, I did have a little question, Linda here. I did have a little question when you talked about the tea flush. So they have 3 flushes, I guess, in a year, but then that tea plant can keep growing, right? So then the first flush will happen in the spring. It's not necessarily that tea plant's first flush, it's the first flush of the season of the year.
Yes, yes. And the tea plant, if it wasn't continually plucked and harvested, the tea plant would actually grow to about 30 or 40 feet. And that is the picture of when I showed the Chinese emperor, and he was actually sitting under, I called it a wild tea tree because it hadn't been cultivated. But these plants can really grow almost into trees if they're not cut back, and they're kept at about 3 feet so that they can work, the workers can pluck the leaves or the machines can harvest the leaves. But typically each tea has about 3 flushes, but there's one that I'll mention later that actually has 5. Yeah. So white tea actually just has 1 flush. It's harvested 1 time of year, and white tea is composed of the buds and unopened leaves. So the leaves haven't even really opened yet, and this is when white tea is picked. It's called white tea because there's a fuzzy white down that covers the leaves, and it's quickly steamed to stop the oxidation process, and then it's just left to air dry. So it is the least processed of all teas, and therefore it does contain the most antioxidants, making it one of the healthiest types of teas. It's primarily grown and produced in China, and the steeped liqueur is a light apricot color, and it has a sweet, mild flavor. And 2 typical types of white tea are silver needle, which is actually in this photo here, and it's just the bud. So you wouldn't think that that's tea, but it is. And another beautiful one is called white peony. I love white tea. It's very light. Even without any sweetener in it, I find it sweet. So I would encourage you, if you haven't tried it, to try it. Green tea is harvested 3 times a year, so 3 flushes, and it's made of the young leaves of the Camellia sinensis plant. The oxidation process is, first the leaves are withered, which means the moisture is allowed to come out of them. It's quickly steamed or pan fried to stop the oxidation process, and then the leaves are rolled rolled by hand or machine and left to dry. This is also one of the most minimally processed teas, and so it has a lot of health benefits. It's primarily produced in China and Japan, and it's either grown in the sun or partially in the shade the last couple of weeks before it's harvested. Sencha is a popular Japanese green, and gunpowder is a popular Chinese green tea, which gets its name because they roll the tea leaves into little balls, and so it resembles gunpowder. If you've ever been to an Asian restaurant and had a green tea there, it's usually jasmine green tea or oolong, and jasmine green tea is scented with jasmine flowers. I really like it. It's very floral, but it has a lovely flavor and scent. If you've ever heard of matcha, matcha is a buzzword these days because it's a superfood. It's very healthy for you because matcha is actually green tea leaves that have been pulverized into a powder form. So when you are drinking matcha, you're actually drinking the green tea leaves. It has about 60 times the antioxidants as spinach, so it's very healthy for you and your immune system. And it's grown in the shade. So what I mean by that is the last 6 weeks before it's harvested, they cover the tea plants. This increases the chlorophyll, and that is why shade-grown teas like matcha have a much brighter liqueur to them. When you make a bowl of matcha, you take a scoop of the powder, and then you need a whisk, as you can see in the picture here. And as you're using less than slightly boiling water, you take the whisk and you're dissolving the powder, and then it becomes a little frothy. Matcha has also been called liquid meditation because it's a calming stimulant. It's been used by the Zen Buddhist monks to keep them alert while they're meditating. Matcha has about a third of the amount of caffeine compared to a cup of coffee. So it has caffeine in it, but it supposedly doesn't give you the nervous, jittery side effects that a cup of coffee can. And a matcha latte is very good because that's the green tea powder, but they add some milk to it too. So I like getting those when I go out. Oolong tea is made from leaves that are starting to get bigger now, so they're more mature, and it's harvested 5 times a year, so it has 5 flushes. The word oolong means black dragon in Chinese, and this is a semi-oxidized tea because it's kind of in between a green tea and a black tea. So this is actually one of the most time-consuming and complex teas to make. As you can see here, depending on how the tea master decides to make this tea as an end result, it can be a very light tea in the end, like almost a green tea, or if he decides to let it go a little bit longer, oxidizing, it can become more towards like a black tea. So it just depends on what the tea master decides, how he wants the end product to be. And the leaves are twisted or rolled into balls. So again, the best quality tea is made by hand. Black tea also comes from very mature leaves of the Camellia sinensis plant, and it's the most oxidized out of all of the teas. That's why it has a very dark liqueur and a full-bodied flavor. The main countries that produce black tea are India, Sri Lanka, and Africa. And black tea goes very well with milk and sweetener. The other teas that I mentioned, the white, the green, and the oolong, they're very light teas. So I wouldn't necessarily suggest putting milk in them, but you can certainly make your tea however you'd like. Some popular types of black teas that you may have heard of are Darjeeling. And Darjeeling is known as the champagne of teas because it's grown at the bottom of the Himalayan mountains. And no one can replicate this flavor of tea because wherever the tea is grown, the tea leaves are influenced by the soil, the air, just the environment in which they're grown. So that's why there's a specific flavor profile to Darjeeling because of where it is grown. Ceylon is a black tea that's grown in Sri Lanka. Assam is a black tea that's grown in India. If you've ever had a chai tea, it's black tea mixed with spices, like the photo here shows cinnamon, cardamom pods, star anise, nutmeg. You can really use many different types of herbs and spices, and it also has milk and a sweetener if you'd like. Earl Grey is a popular one that people enjoy, and it has a very distinct flavor, and that's because there's bergamot oil mixed with the tea leaves. English breakfast and Irish breakfast are blends of black teas, so they could have Ceylon and Assam together. So it's just a blend of different black teas. We have Ruth Bigelow to thank for bringing us to America flavored teas. So Ruth was an interior designer by trade, but in 1945, she decided to create a new type of tea because she found the black teas available in the United States at the time to be very strong and bitter and astringent. So she started experimenting with making a tea blend in her apartment in New York City. So she blended together black tea with orange rind and some sweet spices. And she gave this blend out to all of her friends who loved it. And their feedback to her was that her tea was a source of constant comment. So that's how this particular type of tea was born. And after this tea was invented, she started the Bigelow Tea Company. And as I mentioned before, the Bigelow Tea Company purchased and now owns the Charleston Tea Garden in South Carolina. So if you ever go to a tea house for afternoon tea, and they have all the beautiful, wonderful blends like black cherry vanilla and all these lovely flavors, she really was the pioneer behind doing these flavored teas. So that wasn't just black tea and green tea and white tea and kind of plain flavors. So this last one that a lot of people have not heard of is pronounced pu'er, and it's a fermented tea. And like a fine wine, pu'ers become better with age. Some rare pu'ers can sell for thousands of dollars. And there was one in 2013 at a Chinese auction that sold, it was a pu'er cake, they call it. from the 17th century, because as long as you preserve them, they will stay. And it sold for over $1 million at the auction. People originally pressed the tea leaves into cakes or bricks. And the reason behind that was it made it easier to transport the tea over long distances if it was in a compressed shape. And these are some fun shapes that the pu'er tea can be made into. So there's bricks, there's cakes, there's bowls, mushrooms, and you can even stamp an image onto the pu'er cake as well. The tighter a cake is compressed, the slower it ages. I've tried this type of tea. It's not my cup of tea. I don't like it, but it's very earthy flavored. But you know, some people love it. It's really gaining in popularity. So if you have the opportunity to try it, I would, but I didn't care for it. I tend to, in general, go for the lighter types of teas anyway. Another tea quiz. You want to type it in the chat or say your answer. How does white tea get its name? Can you name a type of black tea? What is the name for powdered green tea? And what does the word oolong mean in Chinese? I used to have the Jeopardy song going on while I had this, but I took it off. So everyone's getting all the answers. So white tea gets its name from, Marilyn got this one, the fuzzy white down on the tea leaves. Can you name a type of black tea? There's so many. Marilyn got Irish breakfast. There's Earl Grey, Assam, Ceylon, Darjeeling, Chai. The powdered green tea is matcha. And Beatrice got this hard one. Oolong means black dragon in Chinese. So everyone did awesome.
I wrote it down because I figured it would be on the quiz.
Oh, you beat me to it. Now I'm going to get into the fun herbal category. So as you already know, herbal tea is really not tea because it does not contain any tea leaves from the Camellia sinensis plant. So what is herbal tea then? It's a caffeine-free beverage made from the infusion of herbs, spices, dried flowers, fruits, roots, seeds, bark in boiling water. And the proper name is herbal tisane, which is a French term. And it's just putting those substances in boiling water and it produces a lovely beverage. Herbals were traditionally, and still are, used for medicinal purposes. Some of my favorites that I'm drinking this winter to keep my immune system strong. As I mentioned at the beginning, I have my cup of ginger. I'm just going to use the term tea here, but ginger tea, turmeric and cinnamon is another good one. Ginger if you have a sore throat, ginger is very good because ginger has anti-inflammatory properties that can help manage that symptom. Turmeric and cinnamon is a good combination together. Turmeric's a little strong, so I like to add the cinnamon, which is sweet, to kind of tone down the turmeric. But turmeric is also very strong, has strong anti-inflammatory properties. Cinnamon is known to increase blood circulation. So if you're someone that is cold, I'm always cold in the winter. My hands are cold, my feet are cold. I drink a lot of cinnamon tea because it's supposed to help keep you warm in the winter. Peppermint and chamomile support digestive health. Chamomile also has calming effects. So it's a nice cup of tea to drink before going to bed. And chamomile can also help with teething in babies to soothe the pain that they get from the teething. And echinacea has strong antibacterial properties that can help fend off infections. It's also great for a sore throat. And one of my favorite teas to drink by a company called Traditional Medicines is called Throat Coat. I sing in a choir, and this tea has slippery elm, marshmallow root, licorice, and all of those literally coat your throat and soothe it. And it's very good after you've been singing or talking a lot. Some other good ones are fennel. Fennel is very good for digestion, so I will drink this after if I eat a big meal and I'm like feeling bloated. This helps with that. Fennel tastes like licorice, so you would have to like that taste if you use the fennel seeds. Rose hips is very high in vitamin C. When you brew it, it actually tastes, it's very tart. It tastes like cranberry juice. So I usually add a little sweetener. Lavender is a very lovely tea for calming your nervous system. It's good for soothing a headache and improving sleep. And this new fun one that I've just discovered is butterfly pea flowers. And they brew to a lovely blue color. And you can actually change the color of this tea by adding an acid like a squeeze of lemon or lime, and it'll turn the liqueur bright purple. So it's kind of fun. This tea is high in antioxidants, and it's like a blueberry really, and it can soothe fever symptoms. It supports glowing skin and has anti-inflammatory properties. So I could do a whole presentation on herbals because there are so many. But these are just a few of my favorites. Another one is rooibos. This is a herb that's grown only in South Africa. It's called African red bush tea or African red tea. It brews to a deep red color. And believe it or not, it actually is rich in minerals. There's also a green rooibos, which I like as well. So I've been talking a lot about loose leaf tea. So if you did want to try to brew loose leaf tea, a lot of people are intimidated because they think it's going to take a long time or they don't know what to do. But it really is pretty simple. All you need is some sort of infuser, or you can make your own tea bags with paper tea filters. So I like this brewing basket here. It's very easy to use. You need a teaspoon, your loose leaf tea, and I suggest using fresh filtered water and not tap water, because tap water has a lot of like taste to it, because there is like fluoride and different things in our water. So I like the filtered water or bottled water the best. And you would use 1 teaspoon of the loose leaf tea or 1 tea bag per cup of water. And a couple of tips for making a great cup of tea that doesn't taste bitter is to use the correct water temperature. So one of the reasons why a lot of people don't like tea, they say, oh, I just don't like the taste of it, is because they're not brewing it properly. So if you just remember to use the correct water temperature and the correct steeping time, I think you'll find that your tea won't taste bitter and you'll start to enjoy drinking tea more. So for black tea and herbals, you want to use full boiling water because that allows all the flavor to come out. And those two types of teas or herbals lend itself, it's better to use boiling water for them. For green and white, the leaves are so delicate and the least oxidized and the least processed that if you were to use boiling water on top of green or white, you're actually going to burn the leaves and it's going to become bitter. So let your water come to a full boil, but then let it cool off for about 3 to 4 minutes and then pour it on your white or green tea. Oolong, as I mentioned, is semi-oxidized. So depending on how the tea master creates the finished product of this tea, it could be more of like a black tea or a green tea. You would just want to follow the instructions on the package if you were to purchase oolong. And if it was more towards a lighter tea, you would not use full boiling water. But if it was made to be more like a black tea, then you would. I did send out, everyone should have gotten ahead of time. I did see that Linda sent out a handout of the steeping instructions. So everything that I'm going over here is actually on that handout. The other thing you just want to keep in mind is the steeping times for teas. So a lot of people will put their tea bag in their cup or their mug and then walk away for 20 minutes and come back and the tea bag's still in there and the tea's still brewing. And you know, you may like it that strong, that's fine. But just some friendly tips would be for white and green, you want to just steep it about 1 to 3 minutes. And for black and herbals, you would do about 5 to 7 minutes. And then this prevents them from becoming bitter. Herbal, since there are not any tea leaves in herbals, you can steep them for longer. You can also squeeze an herbal tea bag because there aren't any tannins in herbals, so you won't be squeezing all that astringency into your tea. But the most important thing about a good cup of tea, I think, is just even take 5 minutes out of your day to just try to enjoy it. And while the tea kettle is doing its thing, maybe you can just take a couple of breaths when you're drinking your tea, kind of breathe in the steam, smell it, look at it before you drink it. And I think Oprah's guest could probably explain this a lot better than me. So I'm gonna show this video. Oh, I hope there we go.
We have the practice of tea meditation. Tea meditation. Yeah. So when you pick up your tea, you might like to breathe in order to bring your mind back to your body and become completely fully present in the here and the now. I don't think of the past anymore. I don't think of the future anymore. I'm free from the past, from the future. And there is a real encounter between me and the tea, and peace, happiness, and joy is possible during the time I drink my tea.
Well, I never had that much thought about a cup of tea.
It takes 1 hour to just enjoy a cup of tea.
A cup of tea like this?
Yes.
1 hour.
Brotherhood and sisterhood. And every moment is a moment of happiness.
You could all hear that, right? Okay, good. So yeah, so maybe a little inspiration next time you make your cup of tea, just sit down for a couple minutes and breathe and just be in the present moment. So if you're wondering about tea bags, in 1904, tea bags were accidentally invented by Thomas Sullivan, a New York tea merchant. And normally he would send out his loose leaf tea samples for his customers in boxes, but one day he just decided to send them in silk bags. And when the recipients got them, they started dunking them in their cups, and they thought this was fantastic and kept asking him for, you know, he got flooded with orders for these new tea bags, but he really didn't mean to invent them, but he kind of accidentally invented them just by sending out the tea in a different form than he normally would have. The main difference between loose leaf tea and a tea bag is really just the size of the leaf. So loose leaf tea are whole leaves that are unbroken. When you put things in a tea bag, the tea has to become smaller. They are getting better with creating some tea bags that have full leaves in them. If you've seen the pyramid looking tea bags, or they're in silk bags, those are the full leaf, but most commercial tea bags will have cut up and broken leaves. With loose leaf tea, you can get multiple steepings out of the same leaves. So in the morning, I'll have a cup of green tea, and I will use those same leaves a couple times a day. I would not recommend using them the next day. I would throw them out, but within one day, you can definitely use the same tea leaves. The best teas to have multiple steepings with are white, green, and oolong. Black tea, for some reason, even with the loose leaf, really you can only really get one good cup out of it. But with loose leaf, when you have them in an infuser basket, the leaves are allowed to really expand and unfold, unfurl, and more flavor and aroma and vitamins and minerals can come out when you're brewing a cup of loose leaf tea. You can also make your own tea bag with paper tea filters if you wanted to try loose leaf tea but want the tea bag experience. I get a lot of questions about caffeine in tea, and just want to let you know that all brewed tea contains caffeine. Some people think that white tea has less than black tea, but as I've learned and studied, really all tea contains caffeine. And caffeine is actually a natural bug repellent that exists in the tea plant. Caffeine exists in the tea plant, and that actually keeps the bugs away from the plant. So tea leaves actually have more caffeine than coffee beans. However, after you brew tea or brew coffee, coffee has more caffeine than tea. If you drink decaf tea, something that has been decaffeinated, just know that there's still a little bit of caffeine in, not a lot, maybe like 1 or 2%. But if you're truly looking for a caffeine-free beverage, if you're sensitive to caffeine and it keeps you up or makes you jittery, then stick with the herbal category, because herbals are 100% caffeine-free. There's 1 or 2 herbals out there. There's one called yerba mate that has caffeine, but the majority of herbals are caffeine-free. This is the final quiz. Can you name a type of herbal tisane? What country is rooibos grown in? True or false, boiling water is the correct water temperature for green and white tea? And true or false, Sir Thomas Lipton invented the tea bag? Oops. So there are so many herbals that we can mention. Some I didn't even say: lemongrass, rose hips, peppermint, spearmint. What other ones? There's just so many. Rooibos. Trying to think of some others I didn't mention. Cinnamon, licorice. Rooibos is grown in South Africa. It's the only place where it's grown. And both of the answers are false. So boiling water is not the correct water temperature for green or white. You would let it come to a full boil, but then let it cool off, because otherwise you're going to burn the leaves and it's going to taste bitter. And Thomas Sullivan invented the tea bag, but Thomas Lipton was a big player in the tea industry because of, we have Lipton tea, but he didn't invent the tea bag, but he was also a tea merchant who started a big tea company. So just lastly, before I wrap, a lot of people love tea because they love going for afternoon tea. And that's how I started my love of tea growing up. I would go with my parents for afternoon tea, and it was just really a fun experience. So we have the Duchess of Bedford, who was the lady in waiting to Queen Victoria, to thank for this. Her name is Maria Russell. And she, around the same time each day, about 4 p.m., she would start to get this really sinking feeling. And dinner at that time wasn't served until very late. So she started asking for some tea and light sandwiches to be sent to her room so she could take it privately each afternoon. And she enjoyed this afternoon ritual so much that she started inviting her friends, and it became like a daily thing. So soon the idea spread throughout England, and the occasion of afternoon tea, as we know and love it today, was born. So if you've never been for an afternoon tea before, it's also called low tea because it was traditionally served on low tables, and it consists of 3 courses. You have some tea sandwiches, some scones, and then some sweets. And you have it in the afternoon, and you can see these ladies here. They are having their afternoon tea on a very low table in their drawing room. A lot of people think that, or refer to afternoon tea as high tea. And I've even seen a lot of the tea houses around, on their menus and on their websites, they say high tea, but that's actually not correct. High tea was basically dinner for the working class, also known as meat tea. And it was meat and potatoes and beans and eggs and breads. And the reason it was called high tea was because it was served on a high table, like this family here is having their dinner. But afternoon tea is the correct term. So now you will know the difference. So in review, there are 5 main types of tea: white, green, oolong, black, and pu'er. All tea comes from the same plant. The botanical name is the Camellia sinensis. Herbal tea is not true tea. The level of oxidation determines the type of tea. And if you just remember 2 simple things, the correct water temperature and steeping time, I think your tea enjoying experience will improve if you're starting to drink something that tastes better. The fancy event with tea sandwiches and scones is afternoon tea, not high tea. And as you can see, tea is very good for your health, and herbals are very good. So I encourage you to drink some more tea this winter, boost your immune system, try a different type of tea if you have never had one of the ones I've mentioned. And if you, have the opportunity to try loose leaf tea, I think you will find that it does give you a better flavor, better cup of tea overall. So thanks so much for joining me. And if you have any questions that come up after the presentation, feel free to email me, teatimewithnina@aol.com. And then if you want to check out any of the organic loose leaf teas with the company that I am affiliated with, it's tealightfultasters.com/Nina. And I do see a couple of questions in the chat. I'm going to stop my PowerPoint. So Beatrice asked, there are so many brands of tea out there. If one were to try different kinds, as mentioned here, how do we determine the legitimate source? So that's a good question. I would just do the research if you are on that particular website and see if they have anything about where they source their tea from. Is it organic? Because sometimes they spray the tea leaves. They really shouldn't have to, because as I mentioned before, the caffeine in the tea is a natural bug repellent, so it is supposed to keep bugs away, but some places do still spray. So not promoting my company at all, but ours is all organic and they don't use pesticides. But I would just do your research. Marilyn asks, should you always use an infuser when brewing loose leaf tea, or can it be put directly in the pot? That's a great question, because when I have gone to tea houses, sometimes I do see that they put the tea leaves right and they bring you an individual teapot for yourself. And the leaves will stay in there the whole time that you're sitting at the table. I've always not liked that, because to me, the tea leaves are still brewing. So I would recommend always using an infuser, brewing your tea to with the correct water temperature and steeping time, brew your tea. And then if you wanted to use a teapot to serve, it's already brewed and to the way you like it. If you did want to put the tea leaves directly into the teapot, I would just say remove them after the specific brewing time. That's all the questions I see in the chat. If anyone else has any other questions, but
Well, we also have the raffle as well. So I want to thank Nina very much. This was very, very interesting. I did learn a lot, and I am excited to kind of dig into this a little bit more. Like you said, it really is a healthy, something good to add to our digestive system. And I am kind of interested in the caffeine. And now I think I know a little bit more of what I'm noticing in the taste of it, just like, oh, I like this or not. Maybe I'm a little more educated as why and why not. So before we do start with the raffle, I am going to stop the recording.